Hello and welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. You guys are going to notice right from the start that we have a different look coming up. Actually, I'm experimenting with some green screen stuff. So now what does this mean? On YouTube, you'll see a nice screen. On Instagram, you're actually currently seeing a green screen because we haven't figured that out yet. And we just realized that about 1 minute before we started. So here I am in green on Instagram, and with my new background, on YouTube, these backgrounds may shift some as we experiment with it, but it is great to be here with you all. As usual, what am I here to discuss? Mind-body issues. And why do I do this? Well, as I was trying to get better from my mind-body experience, listen, we all have mind-body experiences throughout our lives and every day, but I had 8 years of chronic everyday back pain, and I didn't see any way out of it. And I even knew about the idea of the mind affecting the body, but I just couldn't imagine that that was what was happening. I was like, this feels, I mean, first of all, I used all the language that you guys will use. It feels so real. It feels so physical. There's no way this could be a mind-body issue. All of that stuff came up. So I say that in part just to mirror back to you that I totally get your experience. If you're coming in with symptoms and you can't believe that the mind could do it, I was there myself. What ended up happening, as is true with many of you, my entry point was Dr. Sarno's books. A chiropractor that I was working with at the time mentioned one of Dr. Sarno's books to me, and I resisted reading it for a long time. I thought to myself, "Oh my God, bottom of the barrel. I'm going to work with a book to try to get better." But 3 pages in, it changed everything, and then of course, it went from there. I had to get all the information, but 3 pages in, I was like, you know what? I see why this might work. And here is why it might work. Because if the mind is controlling the body, then getting information actually matters. And that's what this is all about. So what did I find? Well, Sarno got me part of the way there, but then I had to keep asking questions. I had to keep getting answers. So why do I do this Q&A? I do it because I know how important it is for you to get answers. If you don't get answers to your questions, what happens? You end up in the exact same spot. You think the same things, your body experiences the same stuff. So our job today is to start shifting your mindset. And I do that specifically with what I call my column system. The columns organize mind-body experience into 3 basic areas that control what happens with symptoms. The emotions column leads to onsets and upticks in symptoms. How this works is that you are having some kind of emotion that's unconscious. You don't want to experience it. And the symptoms come in to distract. And that's why right at the start, they come in because they don't want you to know about whatever's going on. But that emotion doesn't last. And this was part of what I needed, this kind of Q&A experience as I went through things and just asked my questions and tried to get answers. I needed to find out, well, why would I be hurting for 8 years from an emotion? Turns out I was right. I wasn't. That's not why. What was really happening was, and this is the doubt column, my thought process went to a certain place. I was thinking about things in all sorts of ways that just stayed there. And the more the symptoms just stayed there, the more the thoughts just stayed there. And it became a vicious cycle where nothing moved. So I was stuck in that loop, and that's why the doubt column is for supposedly chronic symptoms, where they just seem to not move at all. So we've got, how do you deal with onsets and upticks? We're going to go in through the emotions column because that's what's causing it. And how do we deal with those symptoms that just don't budge? We're going to go in through the doubt column because that's what's causing that. There is a third column, and that third column relates to when you have plateaus in recovery. You're getting better, and you're starting to, doubt's coming down, you're starting to understand your emotions, but somehow you're getting stuck somewhere. Those stuck points are related to your emotional experience with yourself, your relationship with yourself. So when you have an interaction with yourself that's going awry in any way, the symptoms operate in a different way. What they want, instead of distracting like they do in the emotions column, instead of spreading doubt to keep the thoughts in place, which is what the doubt column symptoms think you're supposed to do to protect you, instead of all that, your power column symptoms are trying to communicate to you. They're trying to get you a message about you and how you need to live and how you're not living the way that you need to. I don't mean that as a criticism. I actually mean it as encouragement, because what it ends up meaning is, oh, I can take a look at what's going on with me and adjust it. So those are the columns. Every time I'm answering a question, don't just think about it as me answering your question. Try to think about the fact that when I'm answering somebody else's question, it should give you information about the columns in general and what they can do for you. And that's what this is for. I'm going to give you answers to questions to the best of my ability, and but they really need to be to your satisfaction. If they're not, I encourage you all, keep asking your questions. Just keep asking them. I got to get you answers. Okay. I'm going to say hi to a couple people first, and then we'll get started. Catherine Toomer, TL Design New York is here. Susie Cairns, good to see you. It is Layla. I got your name right this time. Good to see you, Layla. Rudemaster 27. Rita is here. It's it's Jana. Oh boy. Janae. Okay, I think I got it. Janae D. I don't know. Anyways, thank you for joining us here. Rita, thank you for the hello and the green heart to match the green screen. I appreciate it. Jane Smith is here with us on YouTube, and Lynn Slavensky. Good to see you all. Let's dive in with questions because you guys, I'm sure, will have a ton. Okay, we'll start with Jane Smith. Jane says, "Hi, Dr. Dan. Thanks again for being here. One thing I find so unique and refreshing about you is that you treat each of us as individuals and champion each of us too. This is so rare." Well, first of all, Jane, thank you. You are free flowing with the compliments, and it actually really does help because, of course, I like it, but it's also, I'm really wanting to do good work for you guys, and it's nice to hear that it's going pretty well. I do think it's incredibly important, and this is kind of a power column lesson that I learned. You would think it would be obvious to everybody that we all want to be special, we all want to be heard, we all want to be valued. But the thing is, the world doesn't often do that, especially not until we are making sure that the world does value you. So in the power column, one thing that I do is to make sure that I'm in a situation where I'm being valued. And if I'm not, I'm either going to say something about it or do something about it, or I might even move to a different situation, which doesn't mean I'm always leaving things, but I'm thinking about power. So I learned in this lesson, Jane, that, and I'm so gratified to hear what you said, because part of my goal is to give all of you power. And to give all of you power, you need to feel uniquely valued. And I'm glad that feels refreshing. But if you're living in the power column, that's the way you would do it. So thanks for saying that. Okay. Now, Jane then says, "I might be on the road, but here's my question. I was able to, quote, turn off my pain consistently one day, but that night had a huge flare up of neuropathy pain. I felt so deflated. It didn't make any sense. Help? Thanks." Okay. So this is interesting, but a lot of times when you guys ask questions, and I mean this is a good thing, I can feel like, how do I put this? It just feels so good that I see exactly what's happening. So, Jane, this doesn't make sense to you, but when I hear you say it, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I would expect. Now, here's why, and hopefully it'll help you to know this is exactly what I would expect. You took a step forward by being able to turn off the symptoms. You took a step forward in power. And I say this to you guys all the time. When you're taking steps forward in power, one of the things that happens is doubt wants to attack that. Doubt does not want you to get to power. Your power column symptoms know how important it is to receive the communication, but doubt doesn't want you to receive that communication. It wants you to stay in doubt because it thinks you need protection. Doubt doesn't actually have that bad intentions for you, but it's just wrong. It's wrong about what you need. You don't need that protection. You need power, and it's scared of it. So what happened, Jane, is I think you took a step forward in power, and that huge flare-up was a doubt flare-up. It was saying to you, "Oh, I got to take you down now. If you learn how to do this, you're going to become powerful, and then I can't protect you." So that's exactly what happened from a columns perspective. Now here's my question to you, because this is one of my favorite things to say because it's true and also just really important to keep saying. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me. It doesn't matter if it's what I think. It matters what you think. Because whatever you think is what's going to continue. However, I have a strong feeling you're going to understand exactly what I said, because we've talked about these kinds of things before, and it's going to click into place. That makes sense. Okay, so that's the key. Everything has to make sense here. And ultimately, it's got to make sense to you. So, Jane, let me know if that made sense. I know that you're on the road. You may not be able to answer that question, but you can come back and put it in the comments later. Or if you come back later in the session where you're not on the road, answer and see. I hope you got to hear it, but either way, I'm glad we got you some answers. Okay, Lynn Slavensky, good to see you, Lynn. All right, Lynn says, Dan, thank you for suggesting what to say to myself when sitting, which is a trigger for me. You said say to yourself, give yourself a chance to adapt to new ways of sitting. Helped. Okay, Lynn, I see you said I can't be on the call, but we'll listen. Well, obviously gratifying to hear that I helped. And when I think about how this applies to everybody here, though, so much of your interventions are going to be self-talk interventions. We're working to change the mind. Whatever's happening in your mind is what's going to happen in your body. So what needs to change? Our minds need to change. How do we do that? It's self-talk. We've got to walk ourselves through these things. We've got to say, okay, what do I say here? One of the sayings that I have is it does not matter what you're doing. It matters what you're thinking while you do it. Now, Lynn, I know we've talked about that before, and that's been one that has really helped you, but this is an example of it. And it helps to see the specific examples and to live in those specific examples because then you get that practice. You get to know what to do with it. So for the rest of the audience thinking about this, she was having pain when sitting, especially as she sat, it would go up and up and up. And what I've said to her is, listen, you have an expectation that it's going to go up. And so that's what you're thinking. So we're going to give you something. We're going to give you something else to think. This is what I said to her. Give yourself a chance to adapt to new ways of sitting or to even just call into question. Maybe it won't hurt if I'm changing my thinking. That was another aspect of what I said about this, or at least what I would say about it. And so I want you all to give yourself a chance to think differently at a given moment, at any moment, because mind body experience, it's so important to think of as moment to moment experience. Think about what you're thinking at that moment and think about, how do I change what I'm thinking here? I'm not saying it's super easy all the time, but at least it gives you something to hold on to and something to work on. So hopefully the other thing that it can provide is the hope that you can change. Is just to realize, you know what, you can change your mind. You can do it all the time. In fact, you all do that all the time. A lot of you don't know that you can do it about these things. And so we got to keep applying that. Okay, Majida, thank you for joining us on Instagram. Good to see you here. And everybody, please do let me know if you have questions of any kind, and that includes about the system or what I'm talking about, or if you're coming in the middle, what did I miss, or where are you headed, or what are you talking about? It's got to make sense to you what we're talking about. So we'll keep on these mind-body issues and how to make sense of them. Okay, Rudemaster27 says, do you have your book out yet? Oh, I sure wish that I did. However, it is getting really, really close. I'm doing a last edit before the true last edit of chapter 10, which is the 10th chapter. I'm almost finished with it today, and then I go into the last edit. So this is going to be coming out in the spring, and I'm so excited about it. I'll have details soon. If you want to get details on the book or be really up to date on it, you should go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.org, and sign up for the newsletter there. That's the main way that I disseminate information to the whole community. Of course, I will be saying things about it here and on. But I am so excited about it for multiple reasons. I mean, obviously, it'll be a relief to have it done. But the real thing is that I want to have these discussions with everybody. And it's nice to have discussions when you come on here and ask questions. But for us to have a common thing that we've all experienced, where you've read the book and I wrote it and I know about it, and we can discuss these things, it's going to be really exciting. And the whole idea was to have a 40 to 50 year conversation about this. Why? Because if what we're thinking changes what happens to us physically and it's leading to all these symptoms, we got to have a long conversation. It's got to be a long one where we get a lot of traction in discussing it. We've got to bring as many people into this movement as possible, because imagine how much better our lives will all be when all doctors know about this and when our friends know about it and our families know about it. And we don't have to explain this thing as if it's some kind of weird thing when it's just the human condition. So Rudemaster says, great. Thank you for cheering me on there and being interested in the book. Can't wait to get it to you. Adam Coloretti, thanks for joining us on Instagram. Okay, I will keep you posted on the book, guys. All right, Karen Isaacs says, today's sniffles were kind of there. This is a power column symptom Karen's been having. Kept them at bay. Just got into bed, and all of a sudden, a sneezing stuffy. This happens a lot when I get into bed. It's almost as if there's something, quote, comforting. Then she says, I love being in bed so much on a cold winter night. It's kind of suspect that the sniffles come at night. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night sneezing. Okay. I'm going to say this to Karen, but this is for everybody as well. Um, your symptoms are information, and I know that they can be annoying. Uh, they can be painful. They can be excruciating. They can be things that you would just be so like die to get away from. But they're also information, and they'll feel more like information if you feel less scared that you're going to be stuck with them. So if we work in the doubt column, you'll know you're not stuck with anything. You're going to be able to get rid of all of these symptoms. So you don't need to be afraid of them. Let's think of them as information. Karen, you're telling us about information. And I'm totally fascinated by this because you and I have been talking about this one symptom just for a couple of weeks. But in the time that we've been talking about it, I've learned so much about you. And I think even you have learned things about you. And that's telling and that's important. It's one of the reasons that if mind body experience isn't really incorporated into therapy, people aren't learning enough about themselves. Your body knows all kinds of things about you. And if we're not listening to it, we're not listening to one of the major sources, if not the major source, that tells us the things we don't know consciously, but do know unconsciously. So there's something about bed. There's something about the comfort of it. I don't even know what it is yet, but I know your body's right. I say, this is another of my sayings. I have so many sayings, and you'll find many of them in the book. I say, take your body at its word. Your body is saying, Karen, something's going on when you get into bed. And what you and I can now do, especially since you're in group, and I'll talk about that in a second as opposed to the Q&A, because we're in group, we'll be able to talk about that in a more back and forth sort of way and get further in one sitting. And I'll be able to ask you, okay, well, what is it about bed? What is this comforting feeling? Is there part of it that feels worrisome? Is there part of you that feels like it's not okay to feel comfortable and good? I don't know the answers to those questions, Karen, but I do know the right questions. And that is why the groups are they're useful for multiple ways, including the fact that there's incredibly supportive, and it's just one of the most fantastic group of people I've ever met. So the groups are wonderful, but one of the greatest things about it is that I can ask my questions of you and get that rapid fire response, which gives me so much more information when I give you answers. So I'm not trying to sell those to anybody, but I do want to just let people know about them because it's a different option. And it's genuinely, sometimes people are like, well, isn't it the same as the Q&A? It has a similar format because you come to ask questions and I give answers. But the answers that I give are so much more in depth because there's a process where I ask questions and I pinpoint it and I'm like, aha, I got it. I can get there much faster. So, if people are interested in that, you can go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.org. And there's multiple resources on there, but the two main resources you need to know about, one is my teaching seminars. The teaching seminars are pre-recorded at this point. I used to do them live. Now they're pre-recorded, but actually that's good in some ways because if you're up in the middle of the night and you need a place to start, you can download these videos. It's 12 hours. That makes it sound like it's going to be boring, but it's not because I'm giving new information throughout. There's also a lot of Q&As in there, so there's interesting questions that people are asking and answers. But this information tells about not only the columns, but it also helps you understand the whole mind-body field. Why does this person say this? Why does this person say this? How do they fit together? And my whole goal is to have it all make sense. So I can't have contradictions. Now, there are contradictions, I'll put in quote, but they're not really contradictions. What they are is they're things that apply at one moment and not at another moment. And then other things that apply at a different moment. And there are things that apply to certain people, but not others. And there's things that apply to certain people at one moment, but that same person not at another moment. So we need to know these things. And those seminars build that out. What I found, though, is I did these teaching seminars and people said, oh, I got so much information, but then they needed support. And I wasn't even doing these Q&As yet. This is part of the process I figured out about how to support people. But the groups are a way to do that. They're 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can come once, twice, or 3 times a week. They're Zoom calls, and the format is similar to this, but you can get on there and you can ask your questions. You can put things in the chat. We have a whole dialogue, and they're designed to be an hour, but they always run over because we've got a lot of stuff to get to. And, we can get lots of information. Karen, we're going to explore more about this bed stuff when it comes to group, and we're going to be able to get really far, as you know, because we do it all the time. I hear this a lot. People say, I thought group would be helpful, but I'm kind of blown away by how far we could get in one time. And a lot of times that's just in like, 5 or 10 minutes. But it's because of that give and take, I can give you such a clear answer and a nugget of information that you can take with you. So Karen, let's keep it up, but you can do this in the Q&A too. If you want to do follow up, let me know what you think is going on with respect to bed. We know the body doesn't lie. We know something's going on there. Let's pinpoint what it is. We're helping you receive the communication. Let's keep that up. Okay, on Instagram, Rude Master said, I definitely agree. We do have to have discussions after reading the book. For some reason, your voice keeps changing, like it gets deeper. Okay, well, I hope that's not happening for other people, but please let me know. If anyone else is having that experience, do let me know. If you're having that experience and it turns out it's not everybody, then I would suggest you restart your computer or phone or whatever. But I'll wait and see if I'm getting that feedback about changed voice, but I apologize about that. All right. Ryan Edson, thanks for joining us on Facebook. Ryan said, I recognize a younger part of me doesn't want to get fully better, as he is afraid of having to return to caregiving for my mother, who has been unwell for 30 years. Encouraging that part to move forward brings guilt. Any tips from your approach? Okay. Well, this is okay. I got to read this again because this is deep. I recognize a younger part of me doesn't want to get fully better, as he is afraid of having to return to caregiving for my mother, who has been unwell for 30 years. Encouraging that part to move forward. This is the part I needed to reread. Encouraging that part to move forward brings guilt. Ah, I see. Got it. Any tips from your approach? So here is an example of in group, I would ask questions about this because Ryan, I would want, and let's do this. Follow up. I'll ask this question and you give me an answer. I want to know about this part. Encouraging that part to move forward brings guilt. What is the guilt? Are you guilty about moving forward and not doing the caretaking? Or are you guilty about moving forward in a way that does let you do the caretaking? So you see how it could go either way, right? You're the one who knows. So I want you, before I even give you, I will give tips shortly, but I want to get a follow-up response because I'll give a better answer to this. I want to know what the guilt is about. Okay. So is it about going ahead and letting yourself return to that caregiving place? Like, does it feel like a self-betrayal? Or does it feel like you feel guilty that you are moving forward in a way where you then don't do that? I don't know. And I'm going to answer you when I hear back from you. If I don't hear back from you, I'm going to circle back and give you tips anyway. Okay. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Okay. Be gone. Good to see you here. Hi, Dan. Was wondering what the driving force is behind long-term symptoms that don't cause fear. I have mild tinnitus that I don't really mind, but it's still there. Started not long after dizziness did. Okay, great question. So let me say it this way. Any symptom that lingers that long is a doubt column symptom. And I think that's kind of what's being asked here is, okay, well, if it's a doubt column symptom, but I don't have fear, why does it continue? So here's part of the answer, and then we'll go from here. There are actually 4 forms of doubt. Fear is only one of the 4 forms of doubt. There's fear, there's confusion, there's a lack of certainty, and there are questions. And sometimes people, when they hear doubt, they think that what I mean is fear. Fear is one of the forms of doubt, but I want to encourage you, a lot of times you can have doubt even when there's no fear. And tinnitus is a good one for that. A lot of times people aren't afraid of it, though some do get afraid. They might think, "Oh my God, I don't know if this is ever going to get better." That's fear. Here's the thing about doubt. The way that I think about doubt. Those 4 forms of doubt exist on a spectrum. Okay? And that spectrum is where fear is the absolute highest doubt. It is the most crippling doubt possible. You get so scared you can't even think straight. Okay? So fear is the worst of the doubt, and it's the one that is hardest to work with. So if you do have fear, very first step in the doubt column, let's bring down fear. If you do bring down fear, you could still be really confused. This is where confusion is the next rung down from fear. So if you're really confused, you just have no idea what's happening. So you feel really lost. Maybe you're not totally scared, but you feel lost. Well, we've got to get you answers. And those answers can bring down your confusion, and they can move you to the next level, which is a lack of certainty. Okay. Lack of certainty can sound like confusion, but the distinction that I make about it is that confusion, you really don't know what's going on. Lack of certainty, you actually are starting to feel like maybe I do know what's going on, but I'm just not sure. That's an important distinction. And when you're in that kind of doubt, that's beginning to get into more workable doubt. When I say workable, I mean something that you can conquer more easily. When you're afraid, you got to find reasons to not be afraid. When you're confused, you got to find answers that bring down confusion. But when you get to lack of certainty, you can start to have a more rational discussion with yourself or with other people, or in the readings that you do as you think about it, to see how can I actually get more certain about this. So you can get a lot more results from that. Now, even better than that is when you just get to questions. Questions are like the fine tuning of doubt. It's like, you know what? I, I'm not afraid. I'm not confused. I'm even pretty certain, but I still don't understand this one little part. That's questions. It's still of doubt, but it is what I call the gold standard of doubt. It's the doubt that you want to have if you're going to have doubt, because you ask those questions and you get answers, then you won't have any more doubt. Now, back to the question. What is this tinnitus, if it doesn't come from fear? It sounds to me like it is a doubt that comes from one of these other levels. Doesn't sound like confusion to me. This sounds more like a question in the way you're voicing it. You're pretty calm about it. So I just think you have a question about why it's there. Now, let me highlight how this can be there in the form of a question or maybe lack of certainty. Could be confusion as well. I don't know. Well, if we were in group, we'd talk about this and I'd know which one after a question or two. But what I'm understanding about it is when that tinnitus happens, you have an expectation of some kind that it's either going to stay, or at least you don't have an expectation that it's just going to go away. One way to think about it is the opposite of doubt is certainty. So you're not certain this is going to go away yet. That's all it takes for a doubt to persist and for something, a symptom, to be stuck there. So in answer to your question, there's something in your mindset that believes this will continue. A lot of times that's, not only rational, but makes perfect sense because it has continued, right? But if you start to challenge that and you start to think maybe this thing that has been, quote unquote, stuck here is really just a repetition of my thinking. And if I change my thinking, this can change, then that can change. So I can guarantee you we can get rid of that tinnitus. I've done it before with other people. I've had tinnitus myself, and I tend to get rid of it pretty fast. But, for those that it lingers for, I've gotten rid of that too. Nothing lasts. Nothing in the mind body sphere lasts. And very few medical things do either, because most of those medical things can be treated medically. So there's very few chronic symptoms. It's a very big, this is actually something I'm thinking about in the final chapter of my book, which is all about the implications of things. We have to realize there's not much that we're stuck with. The way we think about things, we usually think we're stuck. Take people with, let's take AA, people who are alcoholics. They think they're stuck with that. Now, I'm not saying that it's the same for everybody. Some people can be like chemically dependent. Some people can be dependent on it emotionally. But I have seen this many times where something clicks into place and they can give it up right away and they never go back. To me, the main thing that helps with anything is understanding, full understanding. So I think in this case, and I think this is Bunny talking as Be Gone, I think that we just need to challenge whatever it is you're thinking. We actually need to locate what you're thinking. In the doubt column, we observe, articulate, and counter. Observe means to call it into question, which I was just talking about, but articulate would be next. What are you saying to yourself about the tinnitus? Sometimes you're not even going to know what you've been saying because you just weren't really listening in that way, or maybe you didn't even realize you were saying something to yourself. Articulating is so helpful because it gets it put into words and we can hear what we're saying to ourselves. And I can't tell you how many times I put one of my own doubts into words and I think, well, that's pretty ridiculous. And I can see it from a certain angle, but I can't see it until it's put into words a lot of the time. So we just got to call it into question, Bunny. We can get rid of that. Okay. Sahib Singh, good to see you here again. It's been a while. Thanks for coming back. Okay, Karen Isaac says, yes, I will think about what, quote, bed means. I think that's exactly the thing to do, Karen. This is information. And I understand it could be annoying, but I know we've been working on this. Continue to build on the idea that this symptom, power column symptoms especially, they're your allies. They really want something good for you. Doubt column symptoms are not your allies. They get you stuck for years. And they're protecting you where you don't need protection. Even the emotions column, they're not really your allies. They're a defense against a certain moment, and they tend to be pretty unpleasant, a lot of times even more unpleasant than if we could just be aware. The power column is where you find your allies and symptoms. Even if it's, you know, not the best symptom, or it's uncomfortable, or you really don't like it even. If it is contributing to a very necessary and important communication that ultimately is going to help you, and we can help you have it be not too uncomfortable by managing it in the emotions and doubt column, then it's your ally. And this is great information that we have coming. I don't know what it means yet, but I can't wait to find out. Okay, keep up the good work. All right, Rude Master said, your voice just did that again. It goes like on and off, and I restarted my phone. That's so strange. I'm still not getting feedback from other people that it's happening. I'm not. I never want to deny reality, because that's another repeat of trauma. I'm sure it's happening. My question is it happening for other people? Because we're trying to diagnose this problem. Okay. So if somebody can chime in and just tell me, is my voice coming through? And especially on Instagram, where Rude Master is, let me hear if something's going on. Maybe there is something going on with my Instagram, or I got to diagnose the problem. So please do let me know if the voice is coming through okay. I guess on Instagram and YouTube, if somebody can chime in on both. Okay, Sue Conte, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us on Instagram. Okay. Jamie, good to see you here. Hi, Dan. I'm still having the symptom of dizziness higher at my job. I know you had a flare up at the moment. What are your thoughts about how to figure out why? The symptom goes down eventually during the day, but why doesn't it fully leave? Okay. Let's hold on. I'm sorry, Jamie. I just got distracted by it. There's a couple of feedbacks about the voice, and I just need to make sure this is okay. I will get back to this in a second. Okay, Sue Conte says, voice is good. Catherine Toomer says, your voice is coming through normally for me on Instagram. Okay. Interesting. Hard to know how to diagnose this exactly. We'll keep gathering information, but Rude Master, sorry about that. And keep me posted if it keeps happening. Okay. All right, back to Jamie. So Jamie had a flare up at work today, an emotions column activation, I guess. Okay, Jane Smith says I sound is good on YouTube. All right, well, that's good that systemically it seems like it's okay, but we'll figure it out, Rude Master. Okay, Jamie had an emotions column onset at work today, and she described it beautifully. We had a brief couple of emails about it today, and she described it beautifully. Jamie, I won't share many details because, of course, that was, privileged information. Unless you want me to, I'm happy to talk about it. But I'm going to give you my general thoughts on how to figure out why. You were on the path towards it in the emails. You located what the interaction was. The very first step when I'm looking for an emotions column, well, the first step is to recognize it's emotions column. It's an onset or an uptick. In my system, it's so important to recognize which column are we working with. So if you've recognized its emotions, what that's going to do is it's going to tell you how to work and even what to work on, because the columns define that. So in the emotions column, what you're going to look for is what is upsetting me right now, and how do you do it? The first step, once you know you're working in the emotions column, is to look for the timing of the symptom. And I want to tell you this, the timing is always exact. It's not something where you were bothered by something 3 hours ago, and then as you thought about it, it started to bother you. Your body and your mind responds instantly. It's right when it happens. So whatever the onset was, and it could seem totally random to you, but I want you to stop and think, wait, what's happening right now? Start thinking about, what am I doing? I mean, if you were at work and it was a birthday party and you were cutting a cake for somebody and suddenly you had a symptom, I'd be thinking, what am I feeling right now? Even though it seems like there should be nothing going on, this is a happy moment. What's going on? Jamie, in your case, I won't say much about the details, of course, but it was something in relation to your boss. You thought about that situation, and that got you to the specifics. Okay. Now, you said the symptom goes down eventually during the day. What that is a sign of is that you've kept your doubt low enough. If doubt had gotten high, the symptom could just go off the charts and you could feel worried you were having a problem, and you could have the symptom for a long time. You now have doubt down enough that doesn't usually happen to you anymore. which is fantastic. But in the emotions column, when you're not getting a symptom down, what does it mean? Well, here's a couple of rules of thumb. As I said, first you look at the timing. Next, you look at how much am I getting the symptom to go down when I think about this particular thing? If the symptom isn't budging at all when you're thinking about a theme, then you don't have the right theme. And you need to just think about other themes. One of the reasons it's helpful in the emotions column to have a list of like an emotional menu list is you can start to look through it and be like, was I bothered by this one, this one, this one, this one? If you've got those emotional themes mapped out well, your whole menu is there. And you're going to be able to, in all likelihood, find which one seems like the leading candidate. That's going to give you more information. Now, the next piece of information is, does the symptom go down at all? If it goes down a little bit, but not all the way, then that means you have the right theme, but you don't have the right specifics. And if it goes down a lot, you nailed it. And you can be certain of it because the symptoms always behave that way in the emotions column. So take your cues from the body. The timing and your cues from the body are going to tell us about this. You know enough about your emotional life to start to explore it. So, you said, what are your thoughts about how to figure it out and why? That's the process. But now we need to rely on those lists that we made of the emotions column themes and think about what was applying there and what did it mean in specific. Okay. Let me know, Jamie, if that helped enough. All right. All right. Back to you, Ryan. Thanks for the feedback. I feel guilty of fully living my life while my brother has chosen for the last 15 years to be the caretaker. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. But this shows what I meant about group. In group, I would have asked you that question. You would have said it right away. We would have gotten right into it, right? The Q&As are great, but we often have to go back to these things, that's fine. And now let me see if I can get you an answer nonetheless. So I'm going to jump back to the original question. And you said encouraging that part to move forward brings guilt. Any tips from your approach? Okay. So I would want, this might be even another follow-up question, but I'm going to do my best to answer you here and we'll follow up from there. It sounds like what you're saying is that as you move into power, that's feeling good, but moving into power also means, you know what? I am going to step up and do more of this caretaking. And then you're saddled with the guilt about it. So there's two things I would want to do about this. One is we got to help you detoxify whatever this guilt is. And to do that, we need to understand the specifics. This would be a follow-up question. I would say, well, okay, what is that guilt about then? And I think you'll find in the columns, a lot of the work is just like this. You answer one question and I'm going to have another question. It's one of my usefulnesses is that I have endless questions until I really get something. So my question to you here is, all right, why? Why do you feel guilty about it? Do you feel like you should have done it? Do you feel like it like makes him a better son than you were? Were there circumstances that made it so that he was the obvious choice there? Is it something where you're going to take over and he's going to get to relax some? And so you're taking something off his plate in a way that will help. There's all kinds of circumstances that are going to determine how we might see this. Okay. But I need to pinpoint what's the full guilt of it. Now, that aside, I'm going to give you a more full answer that you can take with you. And then of course we'll continue maybe next week or if you want to email me, it's dan@crushingdoubt.org. Or if you want to come to groups, we can work on it. But the thing I want you to think about is this. Power is something that you only can find in the moment. You can't go back in time. And good news is this. You don't have to change anything. If you live powerfully now, you can feel good about that. And if you do that every day, you're just going to feel better and better and better. So I understand what you're talking about. We all can have regrets. But here's the thing. We all got to where we got in life because of how things were set up. However things were set up for your brother was not how they were set up for you. And it could be very different. And you've got to give yourself space to be you and have had the experience you have. However, you get to step into power. And I often say this kind of thing, but I want to encourage you, when you're stepping into power, do not let any feeling, stance, or anything else stand in the way of your power. You can't get hung up on a personality trait that you want to hold on to, or a way of doing things you want to hold on to, or a feeling that really bothers you, or a stance in life about how you want to live. None of those things can get in the way of your power. Now, there are times where you might need those stances to be powerful, and you do want to hold on to those. What I want to focus on, Ryan, is letting you give yourself permission to feel powerful. Now, how do we do that? I think the main way that I've seen to do this is to do the work in the power column. And Ryan, I can't remember where you are in your process with this, but I would want to work on that core narrative. The core narrative is the story of your suffering self. We have lots of different identities and ways we understand ourselves, but your core suffering self is how you've suffered so that you can see yourself clearly. What I hear in this is a lack. I don't mean this as critically. I mean this supportively. I hear a lack of self-empathy, for you. You are attacking yourself at a moment where you can potentially step into power. You're saying, I don't feel good about this. If you felt full self-empathy, I don't think you'd feel that. I think you'd be looking at this and being like, yeah, that was all really hard, but I'm really proud of myself that I can do this now. That's what it would sound like if you had self-empathy. So, not that you have none, Ryan, because I know you well enough to know you do have a fair amount of it. But a lot of times we have some of it, but we don't have it fully. The core narrative will get that for you. So that's where I would go. Let's find out the condensed story of what happened to you so we can get you the information you need to feel true self-empathy, step into power, and let that guilt go. You will be able to let it go when you really understand yourself that way. Ryan, let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay. Follow up from Bunny. I think I might have been saying to myself without realizing that I don't think that tinnitus can completely go. There we go. Because it's attached to the dizziness in my mind, which I definitely still have doubts around. Okay, bingo. We just articulated it out. This is why the doubt column is, well, one of the many reasons it's so important. We observed the doubt. I helped you call it into question. And that allowed you then to articulate it. And you just nailed it. You said it. Now we get to counter it, or at least explore it. Now we know what you're thinking. This explains why it hasn't gone away. There is a part of you that thinks it won't. You got to get to certainty that it will. Now, you can't just snap your fingers and make that happen. You can't just believe something you don't believe. However, we can have a conversation about it that can get you there. And you'll one thing that happens with doubt is when you start looking at it, it starts to show cracks in its story because now it's being looked at more closely. Now we're going to start to do that because we know what the doubt is. We located there was a doubt, and I knew there was because that's how symptoms behave in the doubt column. If they stay there, there's a doubt. The columns are great for multiple reasons, but one of them is that they truly do dictate what is going on. If you see that you have a symptom that's just not budging, you have a doubt. Definitionally, that's what happens. If you have an onset of a symptom, there was an emotion. If there is one exception to that, which is in the doubt column, you can have a trigger from the environment where you're doing something physically and it gets you worried that something was happening. Even so, it gets you worried. That's still emotional. So it is still an emotional onset. It just comes from a trigger. The power column, those symptoms are dictated by those plateaus. So we can just pay attention to what's happening and what does the symptom look like. That tells us what column to work in. So, Bunny, I think this was great work. I followed the rules of the columns to know that there was a doubt, and then you got it articulated. Now we can work with it. Okay. So keep up the good work and we will keep exploring it. We got a couple minutes left here and I'm just going to finish up on a couple of comments. Okay. Jane Smith says, thanks, Dr. Dan. As my experience makes sense to you, then that is reassuring. And I'll just keep trying to move ahead and not think of it as a discouraging sign that I will never get better. So this is one of the key points to having voices you can trust. Jane, we've built that over time. Your trust in me helps you not have to fight doubt all by yourself. This is one of the reasons I do this Q&A and I do the work that I do is I wished I had somebody with me because when I was getting better, I decided, I guess it's just me and Dr. Sarno. And I just had to do that. Well, I like to provide the things I didn't have. And one of those is that constant reassuring voice that you know you can trust. What I just said, it does make perfect sense to me. If it turns out for some reason you still have doubts about it, bring it back. But it's behaving exactly like I'd expect it to. And I want you to just keep moving forward. You are making progress as I see it. And if that feels encouraging enough to you, then just run with it. Okay. All right. Thanks, Jane. All right. Rude Master said, no problem. I can still hear you good. That's good. It's just your voice changes like it goes deeper for some reason. But yeah, keep you updated like right now. and it's still sounding deep, and then it goes back to normal. So strange. Okay, well, let's see if it happens next time that you're here on Instagram, and we'll keep trying to diagnose this problem. Okay, thanks so much. All right, Catherine Toomer says, Dr. Dan, as I grow in power of trusting myself to be authentic and true, I find a scary part of me asking me if I really still believe everything I grew up with. Why is it still scary? At least I'm not running away from it in a panic or pushing it down below consciousness. So let me start with that good news right at the end there. Yes, the fact that you're not running away from it means you're a lot less afraid than you were. This used to be terrifying to you. I think as you've grown into power, you're getting more comfortable with it. Okay. Now let me back up to the first part of the question. So you say, as I grow in power of trusting myself to be authentic and true, I find a scary part of me asking me if I really still believe everything I grew up with. So this is one of those ones I'd have a question about. I'd want to know, what did you, I don't mean that you were being unclear, but it's just, what goes on in somebody's mind can be complex. So what did you mean when you said that you're not sure if you still believe everything you grew up with? Are you saying that it's hard to fully accept that you're letting go of what it is? Or are you saying you're worried that you won't ever really let it go and that it's somehow kind of baked into you? Or is there a third thing? So I want you to weigh in on that. I'm going to answer one question and I want you to type that in and we'll come back to that. Okay. Because once I know that information, I'll be able to answer better. If you don't get to answer it, I'll give you a more general answer, but I'd like to see what you have to say about that. Okay, Karen Isaac says, just journaled a bit. Bed feels safe, cozy. I love being in bed. My mom was always tired. Turns out she had MS, but not diagnosed till I was 19. I just remember she always wanted to be in bed. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to say a couple things about this, Karen, but you're the only one who will know what's true here, and we'll explore this more in group. But to me, what it sounds like is bed is I don't mean this is a bad thing, but it just seems like bed is a complicated thing from the vantage point that it is a positive and a negative. It is associated with comfort, and it is also associated with these horrible things that happened to your mother. So the mixed feelings of it seem to be what this is about. Now, if we think about what the symptom has been, those sniffles, those have been about mixed feelings about your dad. So I think that the sniffles are a signal of mixed feelings. Something's going on and you're not sure how to situate yourself with it, and you start sniffling. Okay. We know that you associate that, especially with that ambivalence you have about your dad. So I'm not saying I'm right about this, but it's a good lead. And I want us to explore it. Great job with this is actually where journaling is particularly helpful. I don't like people to just journal and journal and journal. I call that beating your head against the emotional brick wall when you're not getting anywhere. But if you are getting somewhere, if you've just hit on a new idea, that's where journaling can be great, because then you can run with it. So, Karen, good work. Thanks so much. Okay, we'll talk about it more in the group tomorrow or however you want to. Okay. Jane Smith says, thanks again, Dr. Dan. Yes, having your reassurance means I can carry on. Whew. So isn't it nice to be able to have that reassurance and just let something go? This is part of why I'm helpful, is I can reassure against doubt, and you can put those things down. It's hard when you have to do it all on your own. But Jane, thank you for your appreciation, and I'm so glad. All right. Karen Isaac says, definitely a good lead. I agree. As you know, I don't know for sure, but I'll help you follow the leads until you know. And when you know, it's going to click. You're going to be like, yep, that's it. So we're going to keep working on that and keep up the good work. And thank you for sharing it with me. We're going to finish up on this one question, follow-up from Catherine. Both things you said, and also the scary part that I'm a fraud and really believe it all, and so will really have hell to pay. The fear that Catherine had. She grew up with lots of beliefs about heaven and hell, and it was terrifying for her. This is hard to say. I have to say it, even though it may be purely doubt. So first of all, I want to applaud you for saying it, because in the doubt column, we've got to face those doubts squarely. We've got to really, square up with ourselves. What are we actually thinking? What do we think about this? So bravo for doing that. I want to tell you something that this, in relation to the power column, your power column symptoms are basically saying, this is true for everybody. Power column symptoms are saying, I need you to get this message so that you can live well, so that you can live at peace. This is, you're much further along. You're very far along in the power column, but this is a place where you don't feel at peace yet. You don't know 100% what you believe about this. Now, I have a hunch about it. I'm gonna say it, and you're gonna have to see if it rings true. I think this is much more about the fact that you know you really don't believe it, but you're afraid you'll be punished for it and end up burning in hell for it. So there is a small part of you that does believe it, or maybe not even so small. But I think what you're really scared about the fact is you're getting ready to leave this behind fully. This is doubt coming in as you step into power. So that's what I'd say to that, Catherine. Let's follow up. I want to hear what you think about it. But we're going to wrap up for today, guys. And I just want to thank you all for great questions, as always, for being a great community, for helping me continue this discussion, which needs to be national and international. We need to just keep talking about these things until everybody sees what we all tend to see, or what most of us are starting to see more and more. So we'll keep it up. It has been a pleasure. I will be back here Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. If you have questions for me, you can email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. If you need help in the meantime, you can go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.org. You can download my seminars if you want to get the full information on mind, body, experience and my columns. And you can also come to group. I'm accessible Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Always. I mean, I'm off certain days, but mostly I'm available. And that hopefully will be a comfort to a lot of you, that if you run into trouble and you need to troubleshoot with somebody, that's part of what I'm here for. Guys, it has been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you same time next week, and I will see you soon. Okay, take care.